Making was a way to use up pieces that were left. Oftentimes it was materials that had been recycled because it was from something that was worn and the fabric was still good, so it would be made into a quilt. And a lot of the quilts years ago were not as fancy as some that we see today, because fancy didn't really keep you warm. They were made with wool. The batting, which is the middle layer, would have been wool. And quilting bees were held years ago. The ladies would get together to work at quilts, and in the beginning a lot of the quilts were tied. That would be tying the 3 layers together rather than quilt them, and that would be easier and faster to do. And it was a social time for the women to get together and talk about, well, things that were happening in the community, or tell little stories, and it was a social activity. Today a lot of these quilts are really fancy, lots of patterns, a lot of detail quilting, and they are a work of art. This was made here from pieces that were left from our dresses that are made here, and so we recycle as well, and it makes into a beautiful quilt. There's lots of quilt patterns. There's no end. You could never ever make all the quilt patterns that you would find in the books. And this pattern is from a book that was written by Polly Green. It's an older pattern, and it's fly foot. When I begin, I pull the thread between the 2 layers to hide it, and then take stitches as small as you can. This comes with practice, of course. And it depends on what you want for a pattern where you're quilting. This were just a sort of well, mainly straight line, but sometimes the design is quite fancy, scrolls or whatever you'd like to do. Sometimes quilting is done, it's called quilting in the ditch, which means it's quilted right on the seam, so you don't really even see your stitches. Some of the machine stitching is done that way. But today most all the quilts are quilted by a machine, not done by hand anymore. And to end this off, I can either take a small stitch and make a knot and pull it through that you don't see it. There's different ways people end them off. Some make a little knot and pull it through, some couple stitches over and over, but there's different ways as long as you hide your end. You just don't cut it off right there because it would pull out.